Attention all men's ministry leaders. We are excited to announce the first ever No Regrets National Leadership Summit, April 26th and 27th at Elmbrook Church in Brookfield, Wisconsin. This incredible 2-day summit will give you the strategies and tools needed to take your ministry to men to the next level. You'll hear from nationally renowned pastor, author, and speaker Steve Carter, along with Steve Sonderman and many of the seasoned leadership trainers of the No Regrets team. The National Leadership Summit is the perfect place to bring your entire team of leaders to hang out together, learn together, and envision the future of men's ministry at your church together. Register today and take advantage of our lowest pricing option beginning at just $89 per person. Don't miss the No Regrets National Leadership Summit, April 26th and 27th at Elmbrook Church in Brookfield, Wisconsin. For more information, visit noregretsmen.org and sign up today. We'll plan to see you in April. Welcome to the No Regrets Leadership Podcast, where leaders are empowered to equip and disciple men.
Welcome to the No Regrets Leadership Podcast. Every week, we encourage and equip leaders to disciple the men in their circle of influence. Our goal is to explore the very best ideas and practices in the area of discipleship and ministry to men. My name is Troy Thomas, and I'm your co-host today, along with the founder and executive director of No Regrets Men's Ministries, Steve Sonderman. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Troy. It's good to be with you again today, and just really looking forward to what we're going to talk about and continuing this series on Leadership 101.
Listeners, you can't see this, obviously, but it's getting close to opening day, and Steve is all decked out in his Milwaukee Brewers shirt. And so we're getting excited. Spring is almost here. It's an exciting time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're continuing our series called Leadership 101. Again, we're taking some time to step back and take a look at this topic of leadership. Since the podcast is called the No Regrets Leadership Podcast, we thought it would be a good idea to do that once in a while.
Yeah.
To talk about leadership, what it is, why it's so vital, some models, some methods and practices for leadership, and all the while trying to understand and stay anchored in the servant leadership of Jesus. And so we started this series by looking at a definition of leadership, what it is and why it's so important. And just to review a little bit, we said that a leader is a person who influences people to accomplish God's purposes. And after that episode, we spent a couple of sessions talking about 7 qualities of effective leaders, including a strong private life, becoming a person of character, staying accountable to others, investing in the lives of others, servant leadership, having a vision, and persevering, what that is all about. And so that was a lot. And today, we want to take a look at growing as a leader. You know, I think about Jesus taking these 12 ordinary, unschooled fishermen, starting a revolution that changed the world. And we see in the Gospels, in the book of Acts, we see the disciples growing. And we know that they grew over time. Peter certainly changed as his ministry grew, and he was leading more and more people. And so we want to take a look at how a leader grows, what that looks like in our setting, in our ministry to men. And I'm reminded of something that Justin Verlander, MLB All-Star, 3 Cy Youngs, future Hall of Famer, still pitching at 41. Have you ever seen him pitch, by the way?
I have seen him a number of times, and he's something else.
He is amazing.
He really is.
So he said, a quote from him is, "There's always room for improvement, no matter how long you've been in the game." And guys, that's really what we're talking about here is improving no matter how long you've been in the game. And so, Steve, as we get into it, I'm just wondering, what is the ministry impact when leaders don't do that, when they stop growing? What happens and what do you see in those ministries?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I'm so glad we're talking about this. And I just think it's an area that so many leaders neglect. And you say, well, what happens? Well, the studies have shown us, and really going back to Bobby Clinton and a lot of his research on leadership and how God develops leaders, that 40% of leaders plateau in their leadership. that they just stop growing. They just, and when you stop growing, you stop leading. And so as a result of that, their ministries plateau. And not only do their ministries plateau, but then oftentimes the leader will leave leadership or leave the ministry. And we know, I've been working on a talk for my upcoming trip to India, and came across this amazing stat that 5 out of 10 people that go to seminary leave the ministry within 5 years. 8 out of 10 leave the ministries within 10 years. That's absolutely mind-blowing. And so often it has to do with the fact that the leader just stops growing. They don't take the time. And so they suffer, their family suffers, their ministry suffers. It'll put a ministry in another transition, or even worse, cause it to shut down. And so the topic we're covering here is just vital, not only for the health of the leader, but also for the health of the ministry and the organization. So glad that we're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. That statistic about plateauing in leadership and the turnover, the impact is very, very real as we work with ministries to men all over the place, and our conference host sites, where it seems like every year we're dealing with different people.
Yeah.
And so turnover is a very real problem in ministry of men. And this issue of not growing, I think, contributes to it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the other thing related to this, maybe I've said this already, but it's that old adage that you can't take people where you haven't been yourself. And so if you're not continually being fed on the word and nourished by the word, you're not going to be able to lead that small group beyond where you have been in the past, and be able to get into the depths of the scripture and discussion, and taking men to new places in their journey with Christ. And so again, it's just vital that we talk about this, and just want to encourage our listeners really to take this serious and to be thinking about, where are they in their leadership journey, and are they growing, are they plateaued, or are they going backwards?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Steve, as we kind of explore it, get into it, what are some practical ways for leaders to grow?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with one that, and we can just go back and forth here, Troy, but I think of reading, that leaders are readers. And I just, so many leaders that I know of, I'll say, hey, what's the last book that you read? And they sort of look at me with this blank stare, like they haven't read anything in a year or so. And but yet what I've discovered is leaders are readers. And so just to read a wide variety of books, not because it's easy just sort of to look at one niche, and we sort of have our hobby horse or things that we really enjoy. And so to say, I'm going to try to broaden my reading to different authors, different topics. And so whether, that might be about leadership, it might be about leading a small group, it might be about growing your prayer life, or something on family, or something on parenting, or whatever. But it's just constantly being a reader. The other thing I really would encourage the listeners in, is biographies. I have learned so much. Just last week on vacation, I read a biography on John Stott. And oh my goodness, it was so encouraging. And I can still remember when I became to Christ. One of the first book the guy gave me was The Master Plan of Evangelism. He said, this is what the Christian life's all about. Then he gave me a biography of C.T. Studd, and then George Mueller. And he would every month give me a book of a different Christian leader. And I've expanded that now to read books on various presidents, world leaders, business leaders, coaches. I love reading. I have a book for my trip on John Wooden. I'm looking forward to getting into that. I just bought Saban's book. And I'm just, again, I try to read as much as I can. Biographies, leadership, history, to broaden it out.
This is so key. So, Steve, I can't even count the number of books you've given me, and I appreciate that so much, because I have a passion for reading.
I know you do, yeah.
But Steve, I think about reading with variety, reading different topics, as you said, but I also think about how to read. I think a lot of us are intimidated by
Yeah.
reading. I know for me personally, um, I was always hung up as a young man about finishing the book. Like if I started a book, I was going to finish it,
Right.
right? It didn't
Right.
matter if it was 600 pages.
Yeah.
I was going to push through it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As a slightly older guy, I have learned that it's okay to just pull nuggets out of a book.
Yeah.
It's okay if a book
Mhm.
is not striking a chord with you to set it down
Yep.
and
That's
to
great.
pass it on, right?
Agree totally.
Are there other kind of tips for reading?
Yeah,
that
I
you
think well, I really agree with that, and I sort of gone through the same thing. And you normally know within a couple chapters if this is worth your time or not. I think another thing I'll just mention real quick is not everyone likes to physically read; they like to listen
Yes.
because they're more audio learners, right, than visual. I'm a visual, and so I like the paper in my hands, where my wife Colleen, everything's on her iPad, and she likes that, or her Kindle, whatever. But some people like to listen. Some people are and guys are in jobs where they're traveling a lot. They're in the car and they have a lot of time. And so just listening to a book and they just that for them is better than physically reading it, which is great too. Um, I really encourage taking notes,
Hmm.
marking pages, earmarking them, underline something, making a note, because I want to go back to that. And and then another tip is don't feel like you have to get through the book all at once. Take your time,
Yeah.
and you don't have to. I mean, some people are faster readers than others, but take your time and then sort of marinate on it.
Yeah.
Think about it, what the author said, and what's the application, and what am I going to do about that? Make a note of it so you don't lose that thought or that quote or that key point.
Good, good. Real quick, any book that you're reading right now that you might recommend?
I just, I would definitely recommend the Stott book. But I think the other one I just picked up to start since I just finished that one on Sunday is Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership by Ruth Haley Barton. And again, it's something that's one I go back to on a regular basis, just on strengthening my soul. Spiritual Leadership by Henry Blackaby. There's two, one by Oswald Sanders and one by Henry Blackaby. They're both great. But I go back to the Blackaby one all the time. And then a shorter one is um, Andy Stanley has a book called, I think, Leadership, maybe it's Leadership 101, but it's basic leadership. It's this real simple, short little paperback, looks at the 5 C's of leadership. And
Great.
I go
That's
back
great.
to that once in a while too.
Good, Steve. Okay, we got to get going.
Yeah, okay.
What are some other practical ways for leaders? We could do an entire podcast
Yeah.
on books, but
We could, but we need to go
we
on.
got to keep
You
going.
know what? I think of Gordon MacDonald has a book, Ordering Your Private World, and he has a couple chapters on reading. And so just to finish that point, guys, if you're looking for a great book on ordering your private world, really a lot of what we've been talking about, Gordon has some great chapters in his book on reading a book and some tips to reading some different categories. And I read that years ago, and that was very helpful and instrumental in my becoming a reader. Okay, another thing is mentors. That if
Mentors.
you're going to continue to grow, you need some people around you who, as we've just talked about mentoring in the past, who will help you with your roles, your goals, and your souls. And to be thinking about developing a constellation of people in different areas of your life. They're gonna sort of put wings on your back and say, you can fly, you can do this. And they're not a peer. This is not a weekly meeting. A mentor is someone that's gone before you, that has some more knowledge and experience than you, that you can get together with maybe a few times a year, and you can ask them questions about an area of life that they sort of has some experience in. And so we talked about in the past, I have a number of mentors, some in the area of finances, some in the area of leadership, spiritual growth, parenting, marriage. And so I will just talk to these people once or twice a year, maybe 3 times a year, just to learn from them and to say, hey, I've got a question about this area. And then they'll just give me some feedback and help me to think through an issue, talk through and process an issue, or to just give me some advice on an issue and things like that. But mentors are so important to help you to continue to grow. How about yourself?
I couldn't agree with you more. Mentors are vital to just the everyday grind of being a leader. So one of the things that I have used mentors for in the past is how do I get through this situation? Almost like a situational response team.
Yeah.
Where or I've got some pain and I need a lightning rod to ground that pain that I can bring it to.
Yeah.
My mentors have served in so many of those kind of triage ways, and kind of in the long term on a regular basis. Let's get together every month. Let's get together every 6 months. But to have someone available, to have somebody that you can text, to have someone that you can email with a quick question or an issue, or can we just get together because I've got some really heavy stuff going on right now. Absolutely vital. So reading is one. Mentors.
Are you looking for a Bible study that will forge a deep and lasting connection with other guys? Then the Basecamp Bible Study Series is for you. Basecamp is a series of studies that will guide your men through the scriptures, addressing core disciplines of the Christian faith, while challenging them to become authentic and committed followers of Jesus. Each lesson includes a digital study guide, teaching videos, and leader notes to help facilitate transformative discussions. Start your spiritual journey today with Basecamp. Visit noregretsmen.org/Basecamp. Again, that's noregretsmen.org/Basecamp.
A third one that comes to mind is cohorts. And cohorts is a term from the Roman army, where a small group of colleagues would work together and share and kind of do their training, do their process together. And so having cohorts, having others who are in it at the same time is absolutely vital as well. I can recall as the kind of ministry to men goes kind of up and down and riding a roller coaster, being able to call on other guys at other churches was so important to me, to be able to say, hey, what are you planning for this fall? Have you ever had an event like this? We need a speaker.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions on speakers? Or another one that frequently happens in communities that I've ministered in is, unfortunately, there are people who move from one church to another. And so a lot of times it's sharing information on people that are common to both ministries. Cohorts are so important. They're important for prayer. They're important for training. They're important for just celebrating what you're doing.
I look at a mentor is like a Paul, right? I mean, someone that's going ahead of us, that's not that regular conversation, where the cohort is like that Barnabas that's there to encourage you, to share ideas, to pray for you, to walk with. I just love the way you described it. And I can just think of different guys around the country that have similar roles that I can talk to whenever.
Yeah.
I can just pick up the phone and we can just talk about life. I had one of those this morning with a guy out in Denver, and have guys like you, Troy, that we're constantly processing life together, marriage, family, ministry, and just to get some like-minded men who are going in the same direction, have the same ministry passion. Because I think so often in ministry to men, we can feel like we're by ourselves, like there's no one else that's doing
Yeah.
this. And you feel like you're a lone ranger, and you just need to be able to call up some other guys, like you said, who are,
Totally.
and really that's one of the things we want to do as a ministry, is provide a
Yes.
place and a mechanism for those cohorts to be formed where you can meet some other guys.
Mhm.
And and I'll just mention, we are starting another cohort in April. And you can go to our website to learn more about that. And that'll be about 12 to 15 other leaders from around the country. And it'll be a 6-month cohort. Now, that's going to be training specifically to help you develop a plan for your ministry to men in your local church. But the beauty is we've done these cohorts now over the years. The guys are staying connected. And they're,
Isn't that cool?
yeah, it's 4 or 5 years later, and they're still meeting together and talking and just calling each other up as they need to. And that to me just gets me really excited.
Yeah,
when I
that's
think
how
about
movements
that.
start.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's how movements start. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, another one I'm going to throw in here is a personal plan for growth.
Yeah.
What I have discovered the longer I've been a leader, that if I don't intentionally have a plan, it doesn't happen. I have a reading plan. My goal is to do 2 books a month, and it's aggressive, but that keeps me, reading and doing things. But it's really developing a plan that's larger than just reading.
Mhm.
It's a plan that says, okay, this is where I want to grow. And as you're thinking about your intentional plan, it can be pretty simple. It can just be, you can do it in your journal. You can put it in your notes section of your iPad, however you want to do it. But be thinking about, okay, in these next 30 days, these next 60 days, where do I want to grow in my character? What's that character quality? Is it patience? Is it humility? Is it compassion? Is it, I want to be gentler in my conversation? Whatever that character quality is. And then maybe you a couple memory verses to go with that. Maybe you listen to a couple podcasts about that. You read a book on that. What's that competency? I want to grow in my prayer life. I want to grow as a presenter, or as a teacher, or as a small group leader. Okay, I want to grow as a small group leader. Okay, well, what are you going to do? Well, there's a ton of great podcasts. We have a number of them that we've done. There's other people that have done podcasts on leading small groups. Maybe you're going to read Brothers by Jeff Gorsuch on how to more effectively lead a small group. Bill Search's book on small group leadership. But you put together that plan. What are you going to read? What are you going to listen to? What are you going to watch? What's going to be, what is success for me 30 days from now, 60 days from now in this area of growth? Well, that's a character issue, a competency issue. Who am I going to be accountable to? Who am I going to talk to about that's going to help me, pray for me, help me, maybe give me some advice? Is there someone I need to talk to? Is there a mentor in this area? But all that goes into just developing a simple plan for growth. So it's not just wishful thinking,
Yes.
but that there's an intentionality to it.
That's so important. And guys, really, the ones that we've talked about already, the reading, the mentors, and cohorts, that goes into your plan.
Yeah.
So your plan lays those things out,
Yep.
and
Yep.
really is a guide for where you should focus, where you should spend your energy, right?
Yeah.
So Steve, are there other practical ways for leaders to grow that you can do?
I'm just going to give one real practical, and then I'll let you maybe get into a couple. But one is conferences. And not to be self-promoting here, but we are having on April 26th and 27th the National Men's Ministry Leaders Summit. And you can go to our website at noregretsmen.org, and you can learn more about that. But that's going to be a gathering of leaders. We have Steve Carter coming in, and he's going to talk to the soul of a leader. And then we're going to have all these workshops. And I know, Troy, you're doing some, I'm doing some. We have other people doing some, just on some of the practicalities of being a leader of men, of how do you reach men, and how do you disciple men? How do you plan an event? All these type of things. So, going to conferences or seminars like this, and there's many other ones.
Yes.
I think of the Global Leadership Summit, first week in August every year, is a great conference, and there's other ones. But just to grab some other leaders and go to that, whether it's for a day or a couple days, just to be around people and to learn from them and to process and dialogue can be so helpful.
Mhm.
How about you, Troy? What would be one of the things you've done or you've seen to be helpful
Well,
to grow as a leader?
Yeah, really at a kind of a detail level, planning events in ministry of men, or doing training, or just the kind of the week by week discipleship efforts. A couple of things that are really important, just in terms of practices. One is feedback cycles, what I call feedback cycles, which is when you do a training, when you do a teaching, when you do an event, when you do a meeting, do a quick debrief on it. How did it go? What did people hear? This practice, I think, more than a lot of books that I've read, or a lot of information that I've received from mentors or cohorts, actually has moved the dial for me quicker. And so the example from I spent a lot of years in sports. In football, we would take game films and we would start analyzing them as quickly as we possibly could so that we could make corrections, because the next week is coming fast, right? Next game is right around the corner. And so the quicker we can get feedback on an event, on a meeting, on a training, on a teaching, the better, and to incorporate it in. So many times, I think, in the church and in ministry work, people are hesitant to give you critical feedback.
Yeah.
And I welcome it. If you see something, I want to know.
Yeah. Troy, I can still remember years ago when I first started teaching and preaching, I gave one of my first sermons to Stuart Briscoe. I said, Stuart, would you listen to this and give me some feedback? And he held it in his hand and he said, do you really want me to do that? And he said, because if I do, he said, I'm going to be honest. And I just want to ask, do you want honest feedback on your preaching? And I had to sort of swallow, think hard. Do I really want Stuart Briscoe critiquing my preaching? And I said, yes, I do. And that was a regular habit for me, that I would just, maybe once a year or so, just give Stuart send him one of my talks and say, Stuart, I'd like some feedback. And I've done it with other people too, not just Stuart, other preachers. And, it was so helpful. I mean, it was so helpful because they hear and they see things that you don't.
Absolutely.
I think about just as some small group leaders out there. There might be someone in your small group that you really respect. Maybe it's a co-leader. And if you're co-leading together and say, hey, listen, Bill, what I'd really appreciate is if when we're done tonight after the small group, could you stay after a couple of minutes and just give me some feedback on how I led the meeting tonight?
Right.
And there's some real humility in that.
There is.
Just saying, I want to learn, I want to grow, because none of us have arrived, none of us.
Yeah.
And we want to just keep on growing till the day we die.
Yeah.
And so that might be, something, or maybe if you're leading an event, is just asking one of the guys on the event team to same thing. Hey, as we had our team meeting the other night, could you give me some feedback on how I did in leading that event planning meeting?
It's really, I call it a feedback cycle, because it's really two parts. It's the humility to open our ears and listen to what that feedback is.
Yeah.
But then it's the courage to actually change.
Yeah. Yeah, to do something with it.
It's the courage to actually implement or execute whatever needs to be changed. That's a cycle. And so the quicker we can get those changes in place, the modifications in place, the quicker we can get over the humility issue and the courage to make it happen, the better and the more we will grow as leaders. So that's one. A second one is just small stages. Looking for small stages is a way to grow as a leader. I know you've talked about preaching to the senior citizens when you were starting out. I'm looking for ways in my leadership to develop skills, to get better, to grow, to increase my learning. And I want as many of these small stages as possible. And by small stage, I mean relatively risk-free, right?
Mhm.
Where I don't have to wait until the big stage, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
it's more painful then, right?
Yeah.
And so if I can build up confidence in small events, then I am prepared for the big events.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. So I think so often, I would hear this at Elmbrook all the time with, thousands and thousands. Well, I just want to preach at Elmbrook. I just want to be on this
Wow.
big stage. And you know, I would say, people would be frustrated. Why aren't I doing that? I'd say, hey, don't worry about the size
Yeah.
of your influence. That's not your responsibility. That's
Right.
God's job. Just worry about being faithful with what you have.
Yeah.
And it's be faithful in those little things,
Yes.
in the small steps, and the small steps lead to the big steps.
Mhm.
And so it's just that preparation and going through that preparation time.
Yeah. Are there any others that you can think of in terms of just practical steps for our listeners?
Well, the only thing I would say, Troy, I think it's assumed because we've talked about this already, but I'll just mention it. It's just that vibrant union with Christ, that we continue to grow in that relationship,
Yeah.
that we just are growing spiritually, and really just growing in every area of our life, spiritually, relationally, emotionally, physically, taking care of ourselves, emotionally taking care of ourselves, that we're just continuing to grow in every area of our life,
Yeah.
and not neglecting any area, but being really holistic in our growth.
That's good. Yeah, back to Verlander, there's always room for improvement, no matter how long you've been in the game, right?
Mhm.
Well, Steve, once again, our time is up. We're going to continue this series on leadership next week. And leaders, we hope that this episode has been helpful to you as you go and make disciples of the men in your sphere of influence. Thank you so much for dialing in. Don't forget something very important. If you find this podcast helpful, follow our show, share our show, give us some feedback so that we can get better.
Yep.
Yeah, for Steve Sonderman, I'm Troy Thomas. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.
Thank you for joining the No Regrets Leadership Podcast. For more information and to access past recordings, please visit www.menwithnoregrets.org/podcast.
Life Camp USA is a nonprofit organization that mentors young men who have lost a father due to military or law enforcement service. Life Camp USA provides an all-expenses-paid, week-long, world-class camp experience that inspires, equips, and navigates these fatherless young men through some of life's toughest moments. Life Camp USA's mentors serve grieving families by helping these sons establish healthy identities, values, character, and goals without the crucial aid of a father in their life. To learn more about Life Camp's mission, visit lifecampusa.org. Again, that's lifecampusa.org.